Masechet Shevuot, Daf Gimel. We begin with a question about the order of the Mishnayot. Mikedi Tana Mimakot Salik, Maishena de Tane Shevuot. Since we just completed the tractate of Makot, why are we next studying the laws about Shevuot? What is the thematic relationship? What does Makot have to do with Shevuot? Now, the truth is that there is an easy answer to this, which is that in each seder of the 6 sedarim of Mishnah, the order of the Masechtot follows a simple principle of going from the biggest to the smallest tractates in terms of the number of chapters in it. So we are in the Nizikin. Baba Kama has 10 chapters, so does Baba Metzia, and so does Baba Batra. Each have 10 chapters. Sanhedrin has 11, so you might think, hey, this violates the order. First you have 10 and then 11. That's not an order of size, but actually it is, because Baba Kama, Ben Baba Metzia, Baba Batra are actually all 3 units within one large Masechet called Masechet Nizikin, which has 30 chapters. We just break it up into 3 parts for convenience, and that's really what it means. Baba Kama means unit 1, or first gate, second gate, or unit 2. So that is 30 chapters. Certainly that's the biggest, and that goes first. We already discussed how Sanhedrin and Makot are actually one tractate that has 11 plus 3 is 14 chapters, right? Really, it was continuous and lists all at the end, the second half of Sanhedrin, there's all the different types of capital punishment, Eluhen, Ha, Nechenekin, and so on. And then it says, and these are the people that get Makot. So Sanhedrin and Makot together would be 14. So you have Masechet Nizikin, which is 30, and then the combined Masechet Sanhedrin Makot, which is 14, and afterwards you have Shevuot, which is the next largest in size within Seder Nizikin. So that actually is the straightforward answer. Nevertheless, the Gemara here wants to find a thematic connection between the end of Makot and the beginning of Shevuot, because often there is a continuity from one tractate to the next, and we do find that here. As follows, Mishum de Taneh, Chayav al harosh shetayim achat mikan ve'achat mikan, ve'al hazakan shetayim mikan u'shetayim mikan ve'achat milemata. At the end of Masechet Makot, we had a Mishnah that taught that if someone cuts off their peot at the temple, here at the edge between the jawbone and where it connects up here, near the ear, around the area, the height of the eyes. If someone cuts the hair over there, they violate lo takifu pe'at rashechem. And one violates twice, once for the right side and once for the left side, even though it's one prohibition. But if one cuts the right and the left, they get 2 sets of lashes. The Mishnah continues and says, also for cutting with a razor the corners of the beard, which are 2 here, 2 there, and 1 underneath, which again, there's different opinions, but here's the one corner, another corner, and the chin, and on the other side, parallel to these 2, which is 5 altogether. So regarding the first one of cutting the peot in any way, even with a scissor, so this is one prohibition for which one is liable to 2 counts of lashes if you do the right and the left peot. And so since we saw one law that has 1 that is like 2, 1 that's doubled into 2, so we continue on the same style, even though it's a different content altogether, of Shevuot that are 2, which turn into 4, and that's how Shevuot continues the theme of the end of Makot. And now we ask, notice that the whole beginning of this perek is stam, is anonymous. We don't have names of Amoraim for a while, and this is the nature of many times in the beginning of a tractate, sometimes in the beginning of a perek, in the middle of a tractate. Also, you have this stam, it's anonymous, and the assumption is that this is post Amoraim, the editors, maybe the Savoraim, editors of the Gemara, that begin an introduction to the Masechet with certain stylistic questions about the language of the Mishnah, although these stylistic questions end up bringing up important things about the content that will come to see in the rest of the Masechet. So it's kind of like an overture to the themes of the Masechet. So we ask, Mai shana hachad etane lehu lekulehu, Mai shana gabe yitziot Shabbat umarot negaim, delakatani lekulehu. How come here in Masechet Shevuot, it mentions the first thing, that Shevuot are 2 and then 4, and then mentions 3 other areas in the Mishnah, where also we have 2 that are 4. And it brings all 4 examples together here in Masechet Shevuot. However, it does not do the same in Masechet Shabbat. In Masechet Shabbat, that begins that Yitziot HaShabbat Shetayim Shehen Arba. Moving something from private domain to public domain are 2 that are 4. That's what it says in Shabbat, and that's it, and it explains it. It doesn't bring the other 3. And also in Masechet Negaim, it gives the 2 that are 4 regarding Negaim, the different types of Sara'at, but doesn't bring the other 3 examples. How come only here in Masechet Shevuot, it mentions Shevuot, and then it brings all the other 3? How come it doesn't in the other places? There is no Masechet for Teharot, this law of Teharot, if someone forgot that they were Tameh, and they entered into the Bet HaMikdash. So this applies only here. So why does it appear, all 4 appear only here, but not in the other 2 places where they do appear in the Mishnah? Amre Shevuot v'diot hatumah degabe hadadeh kitibin v'damyana hadadeh bekorban oleh v'yored taneh lehu gabe hadadeh ve'aidi detana tarte tenaku lehu. And so the answer is that regarding Shevuot and Yediot hatumah, those are together in the Pisukim. The source for both of them is in Vayikra. We saw those Pisukim yesterday. And they're not only close to each other, they're also similar to each other in that one who violates them is going to have to bring a Korban Oleh V'Yored. And therefore it makes sense to put these 2 together. You mentioned Shevuot, certainly you're going to mention also Yediot HaTumah. And since you already have 2, so now you may as well bring the entire list, bring all 4. Whereas in Masechet Shabbat, we're only interested in Shabbat. We bring the 1 for Shabbat. We're not bringing any other at all. So we're not going to bring all 3 just because they're similar. But if you're already bringing 2, then it makes sense to bring all 4. Patach b'Shvuot umfaresh Yediot HaTumah. Next question on the order of the Pirakim in this Masechet. We start off, we're going to be discussing in the first Mishnah, it opens up with Shevuot. Shevuot are 2 that are 4. And then it says, also Yediot HaTumah. So that's what it has in the list. But then, in the next 2 Perakim, we're going to be only discussing, examining Yediot HaTumah. So what kind of order is that? If you have Shevuot and then Yediot HaTumah in the intro, right, in this beginning of this Mishnah, then when it goes on and explains it in the continuation of the Masechet, it should do the same order, Shevuot first, and then have a couple of chapters of Yediot HaTumah after that. The answer is Aideh de Zuterin milayhu pasik shari lehu v'hadar taneh Shevuot nifishan milayhu. And the answer is, since the laws of Yediot HaTumah are short, so we put that in, and that way we can finish discussing that quickly, and then we'll go into Shevuot, because Shevuot have a lot to talk about, and so better to get the Yediot HaTumah out of the way quickly. Shevuot Shetayim Shehen Arba. Shetayim Sheocha V'Shelocha V'Shehen Arba Achalti V'Shelo Achalti. Okay, now we're going to get into the content of the first Mishnah, where the Mishnah just said Shevuot are 2 that are 4. What is it? So now the Gemara explains the 2 that are explicit in the Torah is that ochal lo ochal, I will eat or I won't eat. That's lehara or lehetib, something that I will do or I won't do, and we're talking about things for the future. That's the explicit one. But we learned from that also about the past. If someone says, I ate yesterday or I did not eat yesterday, and if they are lying, then they have to bring al korban oleh v'yored, both for the future and for the past. At least that's what we're assuming right now. Yediot HaTumah Shetayim Shehen Arba. Shetayim Yediat Tumat Kodesh V'Yediat Tumat Mikdash. Shehen Arba Kodesh U'Mikdash. The next example in the Mishnah is regarding forgetfulness that has to do with Tumah, where someone knew knew, and then forgot, and then knew again. The main two that are mentioned in the Torah is where a person knew that he was tameh. I know I'm tameh at 10 o'clock. Then at noon, he forgot that he was tameh, and he ate sacrificial food while tameh, which is not allowed, or entered into the mikdash while tameh, which is not allowed. And then he remembered afterwards. That's tumat kodesh and tumat mikdash. Those are the main two. If he does that, he has to bring korban olev yored. And then we derive from that two more cases, which is when I remembered that I am tameh, but I forgot that this meat here is sacrificial meat. I knew it was sacrificial meat in the morning, and then I forgot, and I ate it while tameh, and then I remembered again that it was sacrificial meat. I knew while I was eating it that I was tameh, I just forgot that this was sacrificial meat. Or I knew I was tameh, and I knew that this area here on the Temple Mount is where one is prohibited to go. But then I forgot where I was. I forgot that this area is the Temple Mount and I'm not allowed to go there. I was just walking and I wasn't paying attention to where I was walking. I thought I was walking on this mountain. It was actually the different mountain. Whatever reason, I forgot where I was and that this place was mikdash and prohibited. I remembered afterwards. So I knew the whole time I was tameh. I forgot about if this is kodesh, and I forgot that this is the place of mikdash. And so that's the 4, and one would be liable korban olev yored, presumably also for the extra 2. Yitziot Shabbat shetayim she'en arba shetayim hotza'ah de'ani v'hotza'ah de'ba'al habayit she'en arba achnasa de'ani v'achnasa de'ba'al habayit. And carrying on Shabbat is 2 basic laws that are 4. The 2 basic laws are removing something from private domain to public domain. And we mentioned yesterday that was what was done in the building of the Mishkan. People took from their private homes various items, gold, silver, and they brought it outside in order to donate. So that's the Yitzi'ah. Also the Pasuk says, Al yeseh ish me mekomo, do not leave. That's where the term hotza'ah is derived from. So we have 2 cases of that, and that is hotza'ah de'ani, hotza'ah de'ba'al habayit. If a poor person, was using a poor person as a typical case, when would generally there be a person standing outside the door and inside the door? A typical case is a beggar comes to one's door to ask for a donation. Of course, they wouldn't do that on Shabbat, because then you're moving money on Shabbat. But we're talking about just a typical case of an insider and outsider using ani and ba'al habayit. So the ba'al habayit is inside. If a poor person sticks his hand inside and picks something up and brings it out, then the ani is the one doing the hotza'ah. Whereas if the ba'al habayit is inside and he has something in his hand and he sticks it outside and puts it down outside, then that's hotza'ah of ba'al habayit. That's the basic 2. And then there's also hachnasa. If there's an item that's outside and the poor person has it in his hand outside, puts his hand inside and puts it down, that is hachnasa of ani. Or if the ba'al habayit, if he puts his hand outside, picks something up and brings it in, that's hachnasa of ba'al habayit. So that's 2. That's 4. That would be 4. If anyone did this bishogeg, they would be liable to bring a korban hatat in all 4 cases. Marot negaim shenaim shehen arba. Shehen arba'a. Shenayim se'et ubaheret. Shehen arba'a. Se'et v'toldata. Baheret v'toldata. Because parashat HaShavua, the things that you see that would be a negas, a leprous spot, or whatever you call this skin disease of sarat, whether it's leprosy or Hansen's disease or some other skin disease or a combination of various skin diseases, there's different ways to identify what they are. And it's 2, that's 4. The 2 that are explicit in the Torah is a se'et and a baheret, which are different shades of white. And those are 4, which is not only se'et, but the secondary markings that we learn from se'et and other ones that are similar to baheret, which the Gemara will explain what that means. Next question. Maneh matnitin, who is the author of our Mishnah? Lo Rabbi Yishmael v'lo Rabbi Akiva. It seems it can't be Yishmael and not Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yishmael ha'amar eno chayav ela al ha'atid lavo. It can't be Rabbi Yishmael because he says one is only liable to bring a korban hatat regarding vows of the future. If I say, I am going to eat apples tomorrow, and I don't eat apples tomorrow, or the other way, if I say, I'm not going to eat apples tomorrow, and I do eat apples tomorrow, then I have to bring a korban olev yored. But regarding the past, although Rabbi Yishmael agrees that's prohibited, I'm not allowed to lie and say, I ate apples tomorrow yesterday when I didn't. Nevertheless, there's no korban there. It's only a lo ta'aseh. So our Mishnah that says 2, that's 4, seems to be assuming that all 4 you get korban olev yored. Rabbi Ishmael says no, only for the 2 of them. Rabbi Akiva ha'amad al ha'elem tumat hu chayav ve'no chayav al ha'elem mikdash. And so if you say that the entire Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, we're assuming that the whole Mishnah is either Rabbi Akiva or Rabbi Ishmael, not part is this and part is that. So Rabbi Akiva would not agree with the clause about ha'elem tum'ah, because according to Rabbi Akiva, if someone forgot that they were tameh, I thought I was tahor for that moment and I ate sacrificial food or went into the Bet HaMikdash, then I have to bring a korban olev yored. But I do not have to bring a korban olev yored if I forgot that this was sacrificial meat, or if I forgot that this area is part of the Temple Mount. And so Rabbi Akiva would not require olev yored for all 4, but only for 2. And so neither of them can be the author of the Mishnah. So what do we do? And we have 2 answers. I can explain the Mishnah that it's all like Rabbi Ishmael, or it's all like Rabbi Akiva. How so? I could say that the entire Mishnah is Rabbi Ishmael. And when we said it's 2 that are 4, it doesn't mean all 4. One is liable to korban olev yored. It means 2 that are 4, and some of those 4, one is liable to the korban, and some of them you're not liable. You're only liable for the future vows, but not for the past. So it's those 4 that are prohibited, but only 2, in fact, are a korban. And you could say the same thing for Rabbi Akiva, that only 2 of these cases would be liable to a korban, although all 4 would be prohibited, and the Mishnah never meant to say that all 4 are prohibited or liable to bring korban, but rather some they're all prohibited, but some you have to bring korban and some you don't have to bring korban. So can we read the Mishnah that way? So we say liftor ha dumya demarot negaim ketanim hatam kulhu lechiyuba facha name kulhu lechiyuba. No, you can't say that 2 of them are liable and 2 of them not liable, because they have to be similar to all the examples there. And when it comes to marot negaim, if this thing is this a nega sarat or not, with all the halachot of tumah that will go along with it. So all of them, not only the se'et, but also the things that are similar to se'et, the toldot, se'et, toldot, beheret, have the same equal law, deoraita, with all the same consequences regarding negaim. That same thing would be true for Shabbat. It doesn't matter whether you put it inside or outside, you'd have the same liability for korban or for sikila, if you did it on purpose with witnesses. It's all the same. So in those examples, there's no difference between the 2 and the 4. And so to here, you can't say that 2 of them are liable, but 2 of them are not. They all have to be liable. So that answer didn't work. So we suggest another answer. Le'olam Rabbi Ishmael. V'chilam mechayeb Rabbi Ishmael l'she'avar korban, aval malkot chiyuveh mechayev. So the Gemara answers, in fact, the entire Mishnah can be the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael. And when we said that Rabbi Ishmael does not make one liable regarding the past, that's only when it comes to a korban olev yored. You only bring korban if one lies, says a false statement about the future. I am going to eat tomorrow. But if he says a false statement regarding what happened yesterday, he does not bring korban. That's true. Nevertheless, all possibilities, one would be liable to lashes according to the Ishmael. Whether one said, I'm going to eat tomorrow, or I'm not going to eat tomorrow, or I ate yesterday, or I didn't eat yesterday, and he lies, in all these cases, he's liable to lashes if he does so on purpose, and there are witnesses, and they give him a warning. And so, in fact, it is Rabbi Ishmael, and he does give liability for all of them, because we said it has to be that one is liable to all of them, because that would be parallel to the other cases like Negaim and Shabbat, where one is liable to for all of them. But the liability is not Korban, which only applies to 2 out of the 4, but rather Makut, which applies to all of them. Now, why is he liable to all of them? For lashes for all of them? Let's see. בפירוש ריבתה תורה שבועת שקר דומייה דשבועת שווא. מה shav l'shavar, av sheker nameh l'shavar. This explanation of Rabbi Ishmael makes sense according to the opinion of Rava, who says that the Torah went ahead and amplified the prohibition against a false oath and made it similar to a vain oath. When the Torah says, do not take an oath in vain, lo tisa, it also uses the word sheker, it also uses the word shav, to tell us that these are similar. What's the difference between Shevuot Sheker and Shevuot Shav? Shevuot Sheker is what we've been talking about. If someone says, I ate yesterday, but he really didn't eat, or I will eat. But Shevuot Shav is something that's just patently false. You say, the sky is green, and you make an oath about it. Okay, that's a different category. It's also a false oath, but it's a different category. Now, regarding Shevuot Shav, that we know one gets lashes. And since the Torah uses similar words, therefore we say, just like one gets lashes for a Shevuot Shav, someone also gets lashes for a Shevuot Sheker. But not for all types of Shevuot Sheker, only if it's regarding the past, because that's more similar. If I say, the sky is green, this is silver, but really it's gold. So that's apparently false statement about a thing that's out there. And something that's in the past is also a patently false statement about what I already did yesterday. It's not something I can change anymore. So while one is self-evident, because you could just look at it and say, no, the sky is not green, whereas the one happened in the past, we have to go find out. So that's the difference between sheker and shav. These are both very different from I'm going to eat tomorrow, where that's in my hands to decide if I'm going to fulfill it or not fulfill it. It's not something that is based on a fact that is or happened already. Therefore, even though, in general, as we're about to see, we have a rule that if there's no ma'aseh, if there's no action, if it's just words, just moving your lips is not called an action, then one does not get lashes. But the law of Shevuot Shav is an exception to this rule. Shevuot Shav, a void oath, one gets lashes, and the Torah compares them, and therefore, Shevuot Sheker, in the past, one gets lashes. So you see that Rabbi Ishmael, who says you get lashes, for at least for the past, is based on Rava's opinion. However, this doesn't explain all four cases. Bishlama achalti velo achalti ked Rava. That explains in the past if I say I ate or I didn't eat and it's a lie, then we follow Rava and that's where there's lashes over there. Shelo ochal ve'achal name lav sheyesh bo ma'asehu. And we have another case that fits perfectly fine. If I say I will not eat tomorrow and then I eat tomorrow, then that's an action. So certainly I get lashes for doing a lo taseh, that's an action. Ela ochal velo achal amai lav she'en bo ma'asehu. But if I say, I promise that I'm going to eat tomorrow, and then I don't eat, why should I get lashes? That is a lav, it's a negative prohibition, but there's no action in there, and it's not similar to Shevuot Shav. And therefore, it doesn't make sense that Rabbi Ishmael would say you get lashes in all four cases. 3 out of 4 cases, yes, but not this fourth case. So how can we explain the whole Mishnah according to Rabbi Ishmael? The answer is Kasaba Rabbi Ishmael lav she'en bo ma'aseh lokin alav. Rabbi Ishmael actually holds a different opinion, that a negative prohibition, even if there's no action, one does get lashes. It's not the widely understood accepted opinion, but there is such a possibility. So Rabbi Ishmael thinks that. Now, while that answers that question, that our Mishnah couldn't be Rabbi Ishmael, we're going to have a follow-up question that if you accept that our Mishnah is Setam, it doesn't have a name, it doesn't say Rabbi Ishmael. So it could be that it was in fact Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, when he edited the Mishnah, he took off the names if he felt that was the halacha. And to say, this is the majority view, even though originally Rabbi Ishmael said it against other colleagues, but when Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wanted to say that this is the majority opinion, he took off the name, not as a degradation of the name, opposite, it's actually a promotion to say, you know what, we like this so much, we're going to say that everyone says it. And so therefore Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said that this is a Stam Mishnah, even though we just established that, at least according to this argument, it is the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael. But if so, we're going to see a contradiction between 2 statements of Rabbi Yochanan. Damar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha kistam Mishnah. Number 1, Rabbi Yochanan says a law regarding all of Shas. Rabbi Yochanan says the halacha is like an anonymous Mishnah, including this one here. So that means halacha is going to be like Rabbi Ishmael, and we just established that according to Rabbi Ishmael, and in order for this to make sense, Lav she'en bo maaseh lokin alav, you do get lashes. And now here's the problem. Vitmar, Shevuot she'ochal kikar zo hayom, v'abar hayom ve'lo achala. Rabbi Yochanan Resh Lakish tamer tavahu eno lokeh. Rabbi Yochanan amer eno lokeh mishum d'havad lav she'en bo maaseh, v'chol lav she'en bo maaseh en lokin alav. Resh Lakish amar eno lokeh hatrat safek hi, v'hatrat safek lo shema hatra'a. Then we have a machloket about a case where someone says, I make a vow that I will eat this piece of bread today. And the entire day passed and he didn't eat it. What happens? Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish agree that he does not get lashes, but it's for different reasons. Rabbi Yochanan says he does not get lashes because there's no action here. What did he do? He just said he took a nap. He made a vow in the morning. I'm not going to eat this. I'm going to eat this today. He takes a nap for the rest of the day. He didn't do anything, so he doesn't not get lashes because there is no action. Whereas Resh Lakish says no, it's for a different reason. You have to give, in order to give lashes, has to be a warning. Now the warning has to be right before the sin is done. So how are you going to give a warning in this case? So he says this vow at 9 o'clock. Someone that sees him at 10 o'clock, hey, you better eat that, or else you're going to get lashes. So he doesn't have to eat it exactly then. He could wait till 10:30. So he's not, the fact that he doesn't eat it right after that warning does not require him lashes. So at 10:30 doesn't eat it. It might be someone will warn him again, but he has all day. So since there's no specific time at which he violates, because he can eat it the whole day, he can always say, I'm going to eat it later. So there's no way to give a warning immediately before he's committing the sin, and that's why we do not give him lashes. Okay, that's interesting, machloket. The point that why we're bringing it is to show that Rabbi Yochanan thinks that lav she'en bo maaseh en lokin alav, but he just said halacha stam mishnah, and if stam mishnah Rabbi Yishmael, and Rabbi Yishmael thinks that lav she'en bo maaseh lokin alav, then Rabbi Yochanan is saying two opposite things. And the answer is Rabbi Yochanan said Tama acharina ashkach. Rabbi Yochanan is relying on a different Seta Mishnah. As we're about to see, there is a contradiction within the Mishnah. Mishnah is a very big document, and sometimes you have an anonymous Mishnah that says the halacha is one way, and another anonymous Mishnah that says the halacha is the other way. How can you have a contradiction within the Mishnah if one editor made the whole thing, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi? Why did he put contradictory Mishnayot within the Mishnah? Okay, we're going to see that. Gemara will ask that question. But anyway, right now we want to say that Rabbi Yochanan does not contradict himself, because even though he said here, lav she'en bo maaseh en lokin alav, he is consistent with another Stam Mishnah that also says, lav she'en bo maaseh en lokin alav. He setama. Where do we see a different anonymous Mishnah that thinks en lokin alav? Ile mahai setama ditnan. Aval motir betahor v'hashover betameh. Let's try out this Stam Mishnah that's in Mishnah Pesachim that says if someone leaves over from the Korban Pesach, you're not allowed to leave it over. It's a tahor, meaning it's perfectly edible Korban Pesach, and you're supposed to eat it that night and not leave over any till the morning. Otherwise, you have to burn it. So if someone has leaves leftovers of a Korban, he does not get Malkut. Also, if someone has a Korban Pesach that's Tameh, meaning you're not allowed to eat it, and you break a bone. The law is you're not allowed to break a bone in a Korban Pesach. You have to eat it like you're on the run, and you don't have time to break the bones and suck all the marrow out, but rather you have to eat it in haste without breaking bones. That law, you would get lashes if it was tahor and you broke the bones. But if it's tameh, you do not get 40 lashes. Let's analyze this Mishnah. We understand why you don't get lashes if you break a bone, and why? Because it's tameh. The pasuk says, "Do not break any bones," but that's talking about if it's kosher to eat when it's tahor. But if it's tameh and therefore not edible, and you break a bone, no lashes for that. We understand. But if you leave leftover from the Korban Pesach and it's tahor, what's the reason that you don't get lashes? Is it not because this is a negative prohibition and there's no action? There's no action because, okay, you eat some Korban Pesach, you're kind of full, you're planning, I'll take a rest, and then I'll eat the rest later. And now it's 2 a.m, and you take a nap, and then you sleep the whole night, and you did not wake up in the morning, oh no, we left over some of the Korban Pesach. That's not done by action, it's violated by inaction. And here we see a Sita Mishnah that says, Lav shen bo maaseh en lokim alav. So when Rabbi Yochanan says Stam Mishnah is halacha kistam Mishnah, he could be following this Mishnah Mishnah and Pesachim and be consistent with the reasoning that he said over here in this case. So that would answer the contradiction from the two statements of Rabbi Yochanan. But this example is not so good. Umimayde Rabbi Yaakov hi de'amar lav shen bo ma'aseh en lokin alav. Dilma Rabbi Yehuda mishum deba katuv liten aseh achar lo ta'aseh. Halav achi lakeh. Hold on. You're interpreting this Mishnah according to Rabbi Yaakov, who said, in fact, that a negative prohibition for which there is no action, there is no malkut. But that's only one way of understanding this Mishnah. There's another opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the reason why you don't get malkut for leaving leftovers is because it's a lav hanitak la'aseh. This is a negative prohibition. Don't leave any leftover. Then it says, but you can fix it. You can rectify it. If you have some leftovers, then just burn it in the morning. And that's why there's no malkut. So it's not. We can't say for sure that the reasoning of this Mishnah is in fact because of lav she'en bo ma'aseh. So in Detanya, and here we have the full machloket that we just mentioned. Lo totiru menu ad boker v'hanotar menu ad boker ba'esh tisrofu. The pasuk says, don't leave any leftovers until the morning. Otherwise, you should burn it. And the pasuk is giving a positive commandment to rectify a negative commandment, and because of that, there's you're not going to give him lashes because he can rectify it. That's the understanding of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yaakov omer lo min Hashem hu zeh. Rabbi Yaakov says, no, I agree that there's no lashes, but not because of your reasoning. Ela mishum dahava lav shen bo maaseh v'lav shen bo maaseh en lokin alav. Rather, it's because there's no action, and anytime you have a negative commandment, but there's no action in violating it, one does not get lashes. So since there's two ways of interpreting this Mishnah, and we don't necessarily have to follow Rabbi Yaakov, maybe we're going to follow Rabbi Yehuda. Therefore, we want to find another Mishnah where it's clearer that Rabbi Yochanan would be following that Mishnah when he's saying Lav she'en bo ma'aseh en lokin alav. So we'll try another one. Ela haisatama ashkach Shevuot shelo ochal kikar zo Shevuot shelo ochelenna. We have a Mishnah that's coming up later in this Masechet when someone makes a vow, I am not going to eat this loaf of bread. And then he says, I'm not going to eat it. Now these two vows overlap each other. And therefore, if he eats it, ba'chala eno chayav ela achat. He's only liable to one violation. Zohi shevuat bitui shechayvin al zedona makot val shigata korban olev yored. And this is an example of a shevuat bitui. That's the type of shevuah we've been talking about now. If I'm going to do something and then you don't do it, or here, if I say I'm not going to do something and then you do it. And regarding something like this, one is liable if you do it on purpose, lashes, and if one does it by mistake, it's going to be a korban ole veyored. Now let's infer something from the language of this Mishnah. Zohi dechayavin al zedona makot aval ochal velo achal lalake. This, when it says here zohi, means this and not another case. So this is a case where one would get makot because he said it in negative. I'm not going to do this, and he does it. So that's a lav sheyesh bo ma'aseh. Makes sense. That's why he gets lashes. But what if it was a different case, and he says, I will eat, and then he doesn't eat? Then he does not get lashes. Why? Must be because it's a lav en bo ma'aseh, and that's why he gets lashes. And Rabbi Yochanan, this is the Stam Mishnah that he's following. He says, halakha ki Stam Mishnah. He agrees with this one. He doesn't have to agree with every Mishnah. Sometimes the Mishnayot are themselves contradictory. So this is the Mishnah that he was following when he gave his ruling. Mikedeh haisetama v'haisetama. Mai chazeh da'abad. Ki haisetama le'abid. Ki haisetama. Now we ask, this Mishnah here is a Stam Mishnah, and our Mishnah that we have with Rabbi Ishmael is also a Stam Mishnah. So why did Rabbi Yochanan decide to pick this Mishnah in Shevuot later on, and not the first Mishnah our Mishnah that we analyzed that comes to the opposite conclusion? Why did he say en lokin alav like the later Mishnah? Why not follow Rabbi Ishmael in this Mishnah that says lokin alav? How did he decide? Okay, good question. We answer that question with another question. Why are you asking Rabbi Yochanan which one he follows? Why don't you ask Rabbi Yehuda Nasi himself? How did he, it's actually in one Masechet, the first Mishnah over here, he says a satam like Rabbi Ishmael, and who assumes that lav she'en bo ma'aseh lokin alav, and then later on in this very Masechet he has another Satan Mishnah that follows the ruling that lav she'en bo ma'aseh en lokin alav. How could it be Yehuda Nasi put contradictory Mishnayot? Ela meikara savar lav she'en bo ma'aseh lokin alav ustamaha, v'hadar savar en lokin alav ustamaha, Mishnah lo zaza me'mekoma. The answer is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi changed his mind. When he first began the Mishnah, he thought that lav she'en bo ma'aseh, you do get lashes, and so he put in out the first Mishnah like Rabbi Ishmael under the assumption that lokin alav, and that's why all two that are four have a punishment, the same punishment of malkut, and so he made that unattributed satam. That's the halacha. But later on he changed his mind and he says en lokin alav, and that's why he put that Mishnah with the two vows regarding eating the bread, and he made that also a satam Mishnah. However, even though he changed his mind, once you teach a Mishnah, that's it stays in its place. He already memorized it, he already taught it, and so that stays in its place, and you're supposed to figure out, oh, I see this Mishnah, but then I see the later Mishnah, it must be Rabbi Yehuda Nasi changed his mind. And that's how Rabbi Yochanan read it also. He says halacha like some Mishnah, but you're not going to follow the earlier one, you follow the later one that reflects the new opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi after he changed his mind, and now there's no contradiction between the two statements of Rabbi Yochanan. He's following the later Satan Mishnah that says lav she'en bo ma'aseh and lokin alav, but our Mishnah can very well be like Rabbi Ishmael under the assumption that lokin alav, and so now it's consistent. Rabbi Ishmael says, and all the cases, the 2 out of 4, one does get a punishment. We'll have a follow-up question on this on the next stuff. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.